My name is Karina, and I'm 26 years old. The day my life cracked open started like any other Tuesday, until my bank app sent a notification that made my stomach drop so hard I had to sit down on the kitchen floor. According to the alert, my credit score had plummeted overnight. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe a glitch or a routine identity check. But when I logged into my account and opened the loan section, my hand started shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. There it was in cold, undeniable numbers. $89,000 in loans tied to my name. Not just one loan, several personal loans, a line of credit, even a financing account I had never applied for. My first thought was simple and terrifying. Someone had stolen my identity. I spent the next hour calling banks and verifying accounts. Every conversation ended with the same chilling confirmation. The loans were legitimate applications submitted using my personal information, my ID copies and my signature. Except I had never signed anything. Then one bank agent casually mentioned the contact number listed on one of the applications. My heart stopped. It was my sister's phone number. My younger sister, Lionel. The same sister who, a few months earlier, had asked if she could borrow pictures of my driver's license for a rental form because she had temporarily lost hers. I remember laughing and saying yes without hesitation. She was family. That tiny moment replayed in my mind like a slow-motion car crash. My sister hadn't just borrowed my ID. She had stolen my identity and taken out $89,000 in loans under my name. I wish I could say discovering that was the worst part. It wasn't. The worst part happened when I told my parents. I drove straight to their house, shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief, clutching printed bank statements like evidence in a courtroom. Lionel was already there, sitting calmly at the kitchen table. My mother didn't look shocked when I laid the papers down. She simply sighed, like I had brought up an annoying inconvenience. My voice trembled as I said, "She used my identity. She took out $89,000 in loans in my name." My mom rubbed her temples and said words that still echo in my head. "She needed the money more than you. Stop being so selfish." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. I stared at her, waiting for the real reaction to appear: anger, disbelief, anything normal. Instead, my father leaned forward and said something that made something inside me snap. "If you go to the police," he said slowly, "we'll tell them you gave her permission." Just like that. Like it had been rehearsed. That's when I realized something far worse than identity theft had happened. This wasn't Lionel acting alone. My parents had helped her. Encouraged her. Maybe even planned the whole thing. I turned to my sister, hoping, stupidly, that she would deny it or at least look ashamed. Instead, she picked up a folded piece of paper from the table and began reading in the most awkward, robotic voice I had ever heard. It sounded like a school presentation. "Karina agreed to help me during financial hardship," she read. "The loans were a family understanding." That's when the truth clicked in my mind like a lock snapping open. My parents had written her a script. They had actually prepared lines for her to say in case I confronted them. The whole situation felt surreal, like I had walked into a play where everyone knew their lines except me. I looked around that kitchen. The same kitchen where we celebrated birthdays and holidays growing up, and suddenly it felt like a stranger's house. They weren't afraid of what they had done. They were confident. Confident that family pressure, guilt, and intimidation would keep me quiet. My father crossed his arms like the matter was already settled. My mother kept repeating that I was overreacting and that family helps family. Meanwhile, the debt collectors would eventually come for me. Not Lionel. My credit would collapse. My future would shrink. My name would carry the weight of $89,000 I had never touched. For a moment, I actually considered staying silent. Because when your own parents threaten you, it messes with your head in ways you don't expect. But as my sister kept reading from that pathetic script, I noticed something strange. The paper was shaking in her hands. And she kept glancing toward the doorway behind me. Confused, I turned around. And that's when I realized she had just delivered their carefully prepared speech to a room they absolutely did not expect to be there. Standing in the doorway were my cousin Matteo and his wife Alina, both frozen mid-step with grocery bags in their hands. They had apparently stopped by unannounced to drop something off for my mom and walked straight into the middle of my sister reading that speech. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Lionel's voice trailed off awkwardly after the line about how I had supposedly agreed to help during her financial hardship. Matteo slowly set the grocery bags on the counter and looked at my father with an expression that said he had just heard something he could never unhear. Did she just say she used Karina's identity for $89,000? He asked quietly. My mother immediately jumped in, sharp and defensive, insisting everyone was misunderstanding and that it was just a family arrangement. But the damage was already done. Lionel had just read their scripted confession to the worst possible audience. Matteo wasn't the type to ignore something like that. He worked in corporate compliance, the kind of job where fraud cases crossed his desk every week. He walked over, took the paper straight out of my sister's shaking hand, and read it silently. With every line, his eyebrows lifted higher. Then he looked at me and asked the one question nobody else in that house had bothered to ask. Karina, did you actually approve any of these loans? My answer came instantly. No. That single word changed the entire atmosphere in the room. My father tried to recover by repeating his earlier threat that if police got involved, they would claim I had given permission. Matteo let out a short laugh that carried no humor. You mean this prepared statement, he said, holding up the paper, where she admits she used Karina's identity. You realize this makes things worse, right? My parents looked stunned, like the possibility had never crossed their minds. That's when my sister started crying. Real panic replaced the robotic calm she had earlier. She kept insisting she thought everything was fine because Mom and Dad told her it would work out. That's when I understood something important. The power dynamic had flipped. For hours, I had been the one cornered and threatened. Now there were witnesses. Matteo took a photo of the script with his phone before handing it back. My parents immediately protested, but it was too late. Evidence had already walked out of their kitchen. The room exploded into arguing after that. My mother tried to blame me for dragging outsiders into family business, which was ironic, considering I hadn't invited anyone. Matteo calmly told them identity theft involving $89,000 wasn't a misunderstanding. It was fraud. Hearing someone say it out loud made my chest feel lighter for the first time that day. I realized something else too. The fear my parents were counting on had disappeared. They thought threatening me would keep me silent, but their own plan had collapsed the moment my sister read that script to the wrong room. I picked up the stack of loan documents from the table and walked toward the door. My father demanded to know where I was going. I turned back and said the sentence they had been so certain I would never say. I'm fixing what you broke. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just left. A few minutes later, Matteo followed me outside and told me that if I decided to report everything, he would back up exactly what he had heard. That offer meant more than I could explain. For the first time since discovering the loans, I knew I wasn't alone. Over the next week, I filed reports with the banks, flagged the loans as identity theft, and submitted copies of everything, including a written statement about the script my sister had read. Once the lenders realized there were witnesses and documentation, the investigation moved quickly. Suddenly, the same family that had threatened me began calling non-stop, begging me to handle it privately. But the truth was simple. They had already handled it privately when they decided to take $89,000 under my name. The consequences were simply catching up. The last message my sister sent before investigators contacted her said she never expected the script to backfire. But that's the thing about lies. They fall apart the moment they reach the wrong ears. My parents thought they had created the perfect pressure tactic, a speech designed to scare me into silence. Instead, it became the exact piece of evidence that exposed everything. And that's how their plan to steal $89,000 from me collapsed in the most unexpected way possible. Because my sister read the script to the wrong room. If this story shocked you and you want to hear more real revenge stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel Core Revenge Tales so you don't miss the next one.